everyone, and welcome to Think Differently, the virtual event playbook. My name is Molly Cano, and I'm the tourism manager for the city of San Luis Obispo. Today's event is being brought to you by a partnership between the city's Promotional Coordinating Committee, the PCC, and the SLO Chamber of Commerce. We know that 2020 has dramatically changed the way many of you do business, and through today's event, we hope to share some practical solutions and considerations for launching your own virtual event. Additionally, the PCC is continuing to offer a grants and aid program to support nonprofits here in San Luis Obispo with $2,500 grant to help you as you pivot to virtual and passive events. We'll drop the link into the chat so that you know how to apply, and we'll also include it in our recap email as well. So a few housekeeping tips before we get started. You will be muted for the presentation, but that doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you. So definitely drop your questions into the chat at any time for the Q&A portion of the program. And if you're having any difficulties, please message me in the chat and we will do our best to help you resolve them. We also recommend staying in the full screen mode for the best user experience today. Thank you all so much for being here. We have a great presentation this afternoon, and we hope that you'll have some helpful takeaways for your organization out of the program. Now, I'd like to introduce our program hosts for today. So first today, we have with us Noelle Feist. She is the Senior Director of Experiential and International Marketing at Mindbody, where she is responsible for creating impactful and meaningful experiences that drive brand loyalty and product adoption across the globe. In her role, Noelle helps produce award-winning corporate events, designs innovative activations, and creates unique and distinct marketing strategies that focus on market growth, retention, and brand awareness. Noelle has an MA in International Marketing from Boston University and a BA in Arts and Design from Cal Poly. Thanks, Noelle.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here.
We also have joining us today, Dana Madison Sewell. She oversees the presidential events and protocol for Cal Poly's Office of the President. In her role, she's responsible for designing and producing events across the campus, from intimate donor engagements to community-wide forums. Dana also has a private event consulting business where she provides logistical coordination for a variety of wine, arts, and education-related clients. Recently, she has transitioned to providing technical support for virtual events and guiding her clients in creating impactful connections in a virtual space. Dana is also a graduate of Cal Poly with a degree in Recreation, Parks, and Tourism Administration with concentrations in event management and tourism. Welcome, Dana.
Welcome. Hi, everyone.
We also have joining us today, Jackie Clark Charlesworth, the Director of Communications at the San Luis Obispo Chamber of Commerce. Jackie leads the team of communication, design, and marketing professionals and is responsible for developing and driving a multi-channel communication strategy. In her role, she also oversees the Chamber's tourism PR work and the Good Morning SLO program. And this past year, she's played a key role in migrating the Chamber's events into a digital space. Jackie earned her bachelor's degree in mass media communications from Cal State San Marcos. Thanks, Noelle, Dana, and Jackie for being here. And now I'm going to pass it over to you to kick us off.
Thanks so much, Molly, for that introduction. And thanks everyone for being here. We're really excited to be able to bring you the second part of our Think Differently program and have a really great presentation that we're going to run you through, and definitely want to leave some time for all of your questions that we know you have at the end. So like Molly said, please feel free to post those in the chat during the program and we'll make sure to get them. We'll also be allowing people to ask your questions live during that segment as well too. So without further ado, we'll just go ahead and get started. We've got a lot of content to get through. And first things first, we want to talk about how you should be getting started when you are thinking about potentially having a virtual or hybrid event. And the most important thing, the foundation for all the planning you will do and all the hard work that will come, is getting your team together and asking yourself a version of these questions. It's really important that you and whomever is on your planning team are aligned with your goals and what success looks like for you for your virtual event. So, this is really the why, what, and how. And if you get through, the yes is we want to have this virtual event to meet our certain organizational goals. This makes sense for us. This will suit our audience. Then you're able to move forward. So some of the things that we would recommend you consider is asking yourself beyond this are, what is the purpose of your event? Is it educational? Is it meant to inform, something like what we're doing today? Is it meant to be inspirational? That will, have you consider different kind of engagement experiences in there as well. Is it meant to be, a fireside chat where you're really just hearing from someone and learning something new and inspiring in your community? And you need to really talk about what you have already, or what might you need in order to facilitate it. That's everything from tech to your panel to your host. And of course, coming from a nonprofit, a big piece is always, how are you generating revenue? We'll get to this a little bit later, but ticket sales are different. Fundraising is different in this virtual space. And so, everyone has kind of taken it a different way, but of course we all at the end of the day really want to make sure that we're adding to our own organization's revenue. So we're all going to give examples, but I first want to jump into one from the San Luis Obispo Chamber of Commerce. We have an event called Good Morning Slow. It's a monthly breakfast program. Hopefully some of you, and I can see that some of you in the audience are familiar faces, have been to this. Before March of last year, this was an in-person event, monthly breakfast program. We had about 300 people attend in person. You can see some images from what this looked like when we held it in person. And so, of course, like everyone else, we canceled this in March of last year as we were leading up just a couple weeks before. And it took us a couple months to ask ourselves those questions at the chamber and the planning committee for the Good Morning Slow, and figure out if it made sense to turn it into a virtual event. Would it still suit the needs of our audience? We have 6 speakers come to this event and share with the audience different unique things that are going on in our community. The tagline for it is "Your community newspaper come to life." So after asking ourselves those questions, after seeing if this educational and inspirational event could turn into a virtual event and still engage our audience and still earn us revenue, we decided yes. And so you can see a little bit of what it looks like now that we've turned it into a virtual event. Of course, you'll recognize that Zoom screen that we all are seeing right now and in many events, but we also added in some other engaging pieces to it. We brought back our entertainment in the very beginning of the event, our live music. You can see in that square where we have live guitar and singing to welcome everybody into the event. We gave some directions to provide more engagement, as you can kind of see in that slide as well too. We've added breakout rooms for networking at the end of the event. And overall, over the last year, or nearly a year, we've learned from every different program how we can continuously improve it. And also by, sending out surveys and asking our audience too. But we are seeing a really great attendance. We're still having about, 75 to 85% of the original attendance show up to this virtual event. And we're excited that we were able to continue to bring Good Morning Slow to the community. While it looks different, it's still the same great content, just in a different space. And so on the same topic, I want to kick it over to Dana, who has another really great example of an event that she's worked on this last year that pivoted from in-person to virtual.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jackie. And as Molly mentioned, I oversee events for Cal Poly Office of the President, but I do a lot of consulting work as well. And based on the attendance here, it seemed to make sense to bring in some of those examples as well. So I saw a couple of familiar faces from FPAC, and so I'm going to give an example of an event that we did at the beginning of last year. So like I said, I consult for the Foundation for the Performing Arts Center to host their annual sidecar loading dock party. The purpose of this event is always to be a friend-raiser and not necessarily a fundraiser. It's to encourage a younger demographic to feel like they have a place at the Performing Arts Center. And so it's in the past, it's just been a wonderful opportunity for participants to enjoy some amazing cocktails, live entertainment, and dancing. But in 2020, in the beginning of the year, when we were in the planning phases for this event, we knew we weren't likely going to get together 500 to 700 of our friends in this type of environment. And so we had to decide if hosting it virtually or some component of it would make sense for us. And because it is a fundraiser and an opportunity for us to continue to engage with this younger demographic, as well as our key donors and vendors, it still made sense to do a small component of this. So we utilized Zoom as a platform we had already had to provide a short social engagement for people to socialize, dance, and support the local vendors. We had Sidecar make custom cocktails and called them the social distancing cocktails, and dropped off cocktails to many of the donors, and also provided opportunities for guests of the evening to purchase and pick up cocktails from Sidecar and support their local business. We kept a lot of elements of the loading dock party by bringing in local personalities like Adam Montiel as the Emcee and DJ Jojo Lopez to provide music for the evening. And we engaged with the audience through utilizing polls to ask them to request specific songs or tell us their favorite dance moves or beverages that they were enjoying. And we took also an opportunity to promote our local liquor sponsors and gave them a brief opportunity to speak to the group. We ended the event with a save the date for the gala for 2021 because it was an opportunity to start the kickoff of the 25th anniversary. Providing opportunities also for guests to then go back to the Foundation's webpage and support. Overall, we kept it short. Guests had a really good time. We were able to engage the audience and ended with a purpose. And this year, moving into the 25th season, who knows what that's going to look like. This platform might not make sense, but there is opportunities to then pivot and utilize the virtual arena, but more in a giving sense and utilizing auction, live and silent auction platforms online. So we'll see how that looks, but for this, it ended up being a great alternative and accomplished all the purposes that we needed. So Noelle, do you want to tell us a bit about the BOLD conference?
Absolutely. Thanks, Dana. I work at Mindbody. I've worked at Mindbody for 11 years, and I have the most amazing events team that I get to work with daily. And we put on a ton of various corporate events as well as trade shows, but our flagship event of the year is our BOLD conference. We've done it now for 7 years. And like all events last year, we were gearing up to bring it to the East Coast in New York for the first time. We've historically done it in California, and we did have to cancel it. So BOLD itself, just for the lay of the land, we generally have around 2,000 attendees. We target our clients, our partners, and anyone else that's interested in the health, wellness, and beauty space. And we bring together an elaborate scene. We've always put on performances. We have major keynotes like Michelle Obama, Kristen Bell, Rachel Hollis, so many more. We do activations. So last year when it got canceled, at that moment, it just didn't make sense to bring it virtual for us. We had a hard time coming up with how to really engage the audience in such quick of a notice. But as we thought about it, there was a smaller group of people that attend BOLD that it did make sense to do a virtual version for, specifically our partners and some of our strategic accounts. So we decided to do a virtual BOLD specifically for some smaller groups where we thought that we could accomplish what we did in person, which is give updates on where the company is going, do roundtables and intimate networking opportunities virtually. And then also one of the biggest parts of Bold is the inspiration we bring with our keynotes. So we did get Glennon Doyle to come do a keynote, and we thought that portion of the event could be relevant for everybody. So we decided to put on a virtual event last year that had targeted segment audiences, but still something for everyone. So for the portion of the rest of this talk, I'm going to be referencing this event to try and give some clear examples. So thank you.
Awesome, thanks, Noelle. So we're moving on to content creation. So you've decided now to host a virtual event. Some of these elements that Jackie alluded to is, really having your purpose, kind of defining the rest of these elements. So if you're looking to educate, you're likely going to utilize a platform that makes sense for that, utilizing a webinar and giving more of a presentation. If you're looking for more of a way to connect, or you're providing a hands-on workshop, you're likely going to want to utilize a way that you can see your audience and engage with them and have a lot of back and forth dialogue. So choosing your platform makes sense based on what the purpose of your event is. And then depending on what you're doing, if you're pre-sending out materials to your attendees, or you have, you're reaching out to various speakers to talk about the content and which makes sense for whatever the purpose of your event is. So I'm going to give a couple of brief examples and kind of go all over the board, just because I think in these examples, some Cal Poly examples and some examples from local wineries or nonprofits make sense. So I'll give two quick examples. Two quick examples on the purpose of our event, how it determined the format or gave us greater access to speakers or vendors. So at Cal Poly, most of our events are centered around donor engagement with the president. When we moved away from hosting in-person events at the University House, we needed a way to continue to foster relationships with our principal gift donors. So we ended up partnering with a local restaurant, Six Test Kitchen. Some of you might be familiar with them. They're new to the area, but provide some awesome experience. And they provided a multi-course paired dinner for our guests that they made and delivered to the front door simultaneously to the donors, as well as the president and his wife. Guests were able to enjoy this meal, and then at the dessert portion, they ended up zooming in with the president and his wife to have that opportunity for one-on-one engagement. And having an activity that they could do or something that they could talk about really helped kind of foster that and bring that conversation along. And it met our donors where they were at, because a lot of them weren't very comfortable coming out in public or going to restaurants or coming even to socially distanced outdoor spaces. So this really continued to foster those relationships. And I think, and a lot of the nonprofits that are here today, that spending that time on that one-on-one engagement with some of your key donors is really important. And then another brief example is I consult with Ancient Peaks, and they wanted to provide an educational program for their wine club members, as they created a monthly series called Song Voyage with a speaker out of Hawaii, Ariana Trujillo. She's a sommelier for the Royal Hawaiian. And every month she would have a different theme and pair Ancient Peaks events with like a cooking demonstration, or she took guests into a deep dive of Burgundy, and it provided a fun experience for the members, and that we would not have been able to deliver in an in-person experience. So I think knowing that what the benefits you can have beyond with the virtual platform in terms of access to speakers that you wouldn't necessarily have, because sometimes you've got the financial constraint of travel or the time constraint of travel and access to speakers that you wouldn't necessarily get. So Jackie, I know you've got a nice example of an educational series the Chamber did. You want to tell us more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Dana. So, at the onset of the pandemic last year, we really realized there was so much information out there. It was hard to distill. It was, our goal obviously at the Chamber is to get the most accurate, up-to-date information and really be able to support our membership as well as the community. And so back in last April, we launched a free webinar series. Typically as a chamber, we have, about 1,300 members. A lot of our content is available only to them. We opened up everything for everyone. We really just wanted to be a support in the community. And so this free webinar series pulled in together some of the leaders that were focusing on the response and recovery to the pandemic, such as County Public Health, the City of San Luis Obispo, the great team over at the SBDC helping distill all of the financial aid and information, as well as some private businesses really helping navigate the tax the tax updates and human resource updates. So some of our, private partners at Morrison Garetano and Glenn Burdett. And we had that free webinar series every week for a few months, just trying to get the best information out to the public. We saw really great attendance from all over our county and even into Santa Barbara County as well. And it was, those are still available on our website. We made them, free for anyone to attend and shared them afterwards. And it was a really great opportunity to pull in the people who understood deeply what was going on or were living in it, in the financial aid, in the new orders coming from the federal and state level, and be able to put it all in one place and get it out. So we saw a huge success in that. We did it all through Zoom, which we learned at that time. And so we definitely have gotten a lot of practice over this last year at the Chamber and are excited to be able to share all of that with you. And I think Noelle has another really great example of pulling together some content as well. Noelle?
Yeah. Well, for us, content is why our attendees come. It's really important. If they're going to spend the time to be at our events, whether it's in person or virtual, they expect really relevant content. So we put a lot of effort into this. We have a whole content team in addition to our events team. And we did what we historically do at Bold, which is we bring in some really important outside speakers, yet we also bring in the right internal speakers to give an update of where we're at. And then we stayed true to, making sure we have those keynotes and that inspiration that they expect at our real event. But in addition to that, we wanted to make it personal for a lot of our attendees we knew that were going to be there. So we actually, before the event, interviewed a lot of our account managers and just asked them to tell us why they thought our clients were so inspiring throughout this time. And then we put these quotes all over the event as it was happening to make it a lot more personal. They'll notice it was their account manager's name that said that and feel hopefully really a lot of gratitude to that account manager noticing that about them. So that's how we really wanted to make it personal. But additionally, networking is such a huge part of this portion of our event. And we were able to accomplish that utilizing Zoom breakout rooms, but that takes a lot of scheduling. So we were specific about who was going to be in each breakout room and what execs were going to be there to lead the conversation. And then we also always had note takers in every single breakout room that can capture the conversation and help reiterate it to others, as well as let us know what happened so we can build on that after the event. So content is so important, but make sure it's unique to your style and try and stay true to what your attendees truly expect. With that, we're going to move on to our section about securing sponsors. Sponsorships are always such an important part of events. For virtual events, I think it's really important to evaluate if you can create a win-win relationship sponsorship opportunity for both you and the sponsor. It's so important to keep relationships with your sponsors that historically sponsor your event. So you want to make sure you're doing it right so that they'll continue to invest in the future. You want to look at the long-term involvement. How can you add value for them? How can they add value for you? For sponsors, you think of them from the ideation of the event all the way through what's happening at the event and after. How can you highlight them? How can you get your brand in front of them? Could that be, a pre-show email that has them on that? Or are you utilizing breakout rooms? You could think through rotating banners, video content, all of that. For us, at Bold, sponsorship is a major part for our in-person event. We have a ton of partners whose target clients are our clients. So they really want to be involved. But when we shifted to this smaller virtual bold, we decided it didn't actually make sense for this audience that we were targeting. So we decided not to do sponsors, except for a natural win-win relationship. We had one partner who offers music, music that our clients could potentially utilize that is helps them with royalties, and they won't get flagged for utilizing music they can't have. So for that, we decided to utilize them for all of our event music as well to highlight them. So they had that intro music, the in-between transitional music, they provided us with the playlist, and that was a win-win relationship because it added to our event for our attendees, as well as it got that information to attendees that could really utilize them. Jackie, I think you have some additional thoughts on sponsors. Do you want to take it over?
Yeah, definitely. Just really quickly, obviously at the Chamber, we rely heavily on our partnerships and our sponsorships as well. And so, engaging them, like Noelle said, from the very beginning, this is, the ideation phase. Once you've realized you are ready to have a virtual event or reimagine whatever you're doing into some kind of virtual hybrid, I can't stress getting them on board early enough. We actually created a few brand new programs or campaigns this last year. Beyond the free webinar series, another one that we did is called our Small Business Spotlights. So early on, we knew that there were certain industries from the pandemic that were being hurt hardest. It's specifically those facing, who had in-person interactions. So our hospitality businesses, our wineries, our retail, our restaurants. So we created the Small Business Spotlights for our members to be able to share quick little snippets about what's going on with them and how the community can really best support them during this time, especially as things were constantly changing. And we've been fortunate enough to partner with a couple local businesses, Comevo and Hathaway here in San Luis Obispo, where they're both headquartered, to sponsor those spotlight videos. So we air them weekly. They've come on for separate quarters where we're able to share with the audience, with our audience, these small businesses that those businesses really have a, instinct and fundamental desire to support in our community. And so we specifically reached out to them knowing that having a thriving business community in SLO was valuable to them, and they were natural partners for us. So really thinking of the goal of your event or your campaign and who you already work with that might be a great fit to partner on that is key to making sure your sponsors feel heard and utilizing them in the best way while also supporting your goals and your mission. All right, and with that, we're going to move into event promotion. So now that you have, decided you are ready to have this event, you've got your team on board, you know what content you want to create, what your goals are, you've brought in your sponsors, it's time to start promoting. And event promotion is key to planning any event, virtual or in person. But when the influx of the digital space, all of the emails we're all getting every single moment of every day, it feels like, how everything has moved so much more into social media. We're, bombarded by ads all the time. It's more important than ever to understand how to reach and target your audience through all of this noise. So, first things first, promotion timelines for virtual events are not what they are for in-person events. Whereas if you were launching an in-person event, you'd probably want at least, 6 to 8 weeks or longer to get the message out there. You'd have a save the date. And then a couple weeks later, you'd send your, sign up email, your first sign up email, and then you make sure to stay in front of them every week or every other week until launch. People aren't planning that far in advance anymore. I'm sure I don't have to tell all of you. So we now suggest for a virtual event like this one, 3 to 4 weeks in advance is the time that we're seeing people are signing up initially. And then, yes, staying in front of them through the launch of the event. So social media as a strategy, of course, like I said, people are really active on there now, email marketing, getting your sponsors and your partners to help share your messages as well, as whatever that is. But the lead time is a lot shorter for something like this. If you are planning a longer, multi-day conference, something like Bold, which I know Noelle will share a little bit about, then a longer lead time does make sense, especially if it's a multi-day conference or multi-days of virtual events. You will maybe go back to that 5 to 6 week time. But best practices is keep it short, stay in front of them, send a reminder email, the day or the hour before, because we're all moving so quickly and there's so many things. And even though a lot of us are in front of our computer all the time, things fall off our calendar. So make sure you're staying in the shorter attention span that exists now. And then really talking about, why is your event unique? How does holding it virtually add value? Like Dana was talking about, you're able to bring in maybe really impressive speakers that you would have never been able to bring in person to your venue. For instance, for the first series of this, the first part of this Think Differently series, we had our panel of speakers from all over the country. We had someone from Washington, D.C. who puts on political events speak. We had someone from LA who works, with the Hollywood elite. It was really exciting to be able to bring in all of these varied expert speakers who might not have flown to SLO in the past or had the time to take off a few days from their schedule, but hey, a couple hours in the middle of the week was no problem. So that can really, help boost your marketing and messaging as well. And then, of course, event branding and theme is important. And so, virtual events rely heavily on strong visuals. So I'll show a little bit of an example back to Good Morning SLO, the event I shared in the beginning, of just how we tie in our digital branding for this. So from the very first launch email, through our social media posts, through flyers that we're sharing out, and then our recap email where you can revisit all of the content. We rebranded Good Morning SLO when we moved it virtual. We created a graphic for it. And now when you see this color story, hopefully invokes the Good Morning SLO program. And we brand it throughout all of our promotion and also in the event as well, which really creates a strong tie to the event and a strong message as well. And like I said, Noelle has some really great examples too. So I'm going to kick it over to her to share her experience.
Thanks, Jackie. Yeah, I'm just going to reiterate what Jackie said. We definitely adhere to the 3 to 4 week timeline for our virtual events. But there's some caveats to that. The first is, if you plan to send swag, something to your attendees before they arrive, you do need a little bit longer because you need to capture their addresses and make sure they get sent out in time. The other caveat is, like Jackie mentioned, we're going to be planning a hybrid event for Bold in 2021. And you do need a longer timeline because with hybrid, you want your people that are coming to the event to learn about it way in advance, but you want to make sure they know the options for both. So it definitely depends on what type of event you're doing. So with that, branding is a huge portion of our live Bold event. When our attendees arrive to our venue, they walk in and they say, wow, I'm here, I've arrived, Mindbody has invested in me. We do a lot of work on making sure they have that feeling as soon as they get in. And we wanted that for this Bold too. So we did spend the time to make unique branding just for our virtual conference. And that we had through all of our marketing. So for this, it's our, first touch of come to our event, all the way over to our landing page. So the landing page looks very similar to the invite. And then you can move over, I'm going to move the next slide, and then all the way over to our reminder emails. Like Jackie said, you want to make sure that you remind them multiple times. People just forget in this busy world. So for us, we remind them the day before a virtual event, as well as an hour before. So if we can move through the next 2 slides, I'll just quickly show you our landing page. It matches all of that branding. It makes them feel like it's cohesive from what they saw. And then the next slide shows our emails that they get. So we still have that branding all the way through, We have these reminders. We're making sure that it's the easiest experience possible for them to click on that link and join the event. And that's what you really want to make sure happens with all of that promotion before the event. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Dana to talk about preparation and production.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So preparation and production checklist. Practice, practice, practice. I could just say that. I mean, we all know that, you know, with technology, getting really familiar with your platform, whatever you're using, and making sure that everybody in your team is comfortable with it. Making sure everyone continues to log in early. Even if you become comfortable with your platform, know that there's always could be glitches. And so just refamiliarizing yourself every time you're logging in and making sure your settings are correct really allows you to have a really smooth rest of your experience. Developing a detailed run of show will help everyone feel confident and comfortable, and not forget the small details when we're in the height of the event or trying to troubleshoot something that went not quite to plan. Then determining everyone's roles and responsibilities. So you have a variety of people that you need as part of your team to execute an event. Your MC, your speakers, your moderator, determining who's monitoring and replying to your chat, who's providing technical troubleshooting, making sure everyone knows what their roles are and feels really comfortable with their job. And preparing your speakers, providing them with that detailed run of show, making sure you know who is sharing, you and they know who is sharing and progressing their content, having them arrive early to test their equipment, their lighting, their background, their internet connection, and then making sure in those run of shows, you've got a technical run of show as well. So you've got multiple components of it, but your technical team, doing a run of show internally first, and then bringing in all the people together to really brief your speakers and have all of the components looking like you want them to is key. The biggest tip that I would say is always have a contingency plan. Simple redundancies can really save you when technical issues arrive. So we always have multiple people with the same content on their computers. And so if one person has an issue, we can easily and seamlessly jump over to screen sharing from somebody else. And same thing with prepping your speakers and your MC, having extra content that you can throw in. If you're having one of your speakers is their internet connection isn't great, they get cut out, or just something isn't going to plan, just always having those backup content, or having your MC be prepped and knowing that they can move and shift around the run of show or the flow if needed. It just really, having a good MC and somebody and your team really prepped will help really mitigate your audience seeing some of those technical issues. And Jackie, you had Jackie's going to provide, she put together a virtual event playbook that she's going to provide to all of you that has some really great content, because we could get into the weeds about production and tech support all day long. But this will give you a really nice outline that she'll provide at the end of this session. So I'm going to, because of limited time, I'm going to turn it over to Noelle to talk about Attendee Experience.
Absolutely, thanks. Definitely want to reiterate that prepping your speakers. For the preparation, we do a dress rehearsal, not just a run of show. We did it at the exact same time, so lighting will be consistent. And one thing I just want to add is do it a couple days before the event. For us, we spent the entire dress rehearsal doing things like fixing lighting and making sure the speakers had the right background. And we ended up needing a whole nother run of show to get through the content on time. So you may need that extra time, so do it ahead of time. On the attendee experience, it's the most important part of these events, right? So it determines the success. It's what makes you creditable. It ideally determines attendees coming back for future events. And Zoom fatigue is a real thing. We hear it all the time, and it is real. And the last thing the attendees want are people to just talk at you, talk to you. That's why, for example, for this event, we made it 1.5 hours, which can seem a little long, but we wanted to make sure we have time to hear from all of you personally in the Q&A. So we also strategically made this event a meeting versus a webinar for that reason. So these are all things you want to think about for your own event attendee experience. You want to make sure you're setting the right tone. What happens when they join? For us, we utilized music to pump you guys up and had a little bit of a slideshow going on with some important information. So always think about that. How when at our Live of Bold event, when they arrive and say, wow, we're here, how can you translate that in a virtual tone? The Emcee interaction is huge. The Emcee is truly powerful for virtual events because they can keep an eye out of what everyone needs and keep the show running on time. And then make sure you're engaging with the audience. So a lot of those tools can be the polling, the Q&A, in-session chat, as well as there's tons of softwares you can utilize. For us, we use a software called Menti a lot on our virtual events. MENTI. It is a polling software that displays the polls in real time in a very beautiful visual way. So it's really fun to just even see who's here. So, you know, we can get a gauge of everyone that's at the event and know how to network. So also thinking about utilizing Zoom breakout rooms. If you wanted to really do some sort of roundtable, that's a great way to do it too. So for our virtual Bold, the experience looked a lot different. We can go to the next slide. I'll show you what we had posted on social media for the event. It's not what we had at our live event, but it's still fun. It was still, we thought about how our attendees were going to view this. And while they may be home and comfy, how do we keep them excited throughout the event? So just think about that experience. In addition, one big thing I want to highlight is exactly what Molly even did in the beginning of this event. She said, you know, make sure you utilize the Q&A for questions, this chat, and we'll address them when we're done. You want to do that lay of the land. My role at this virtual Bold was to give the lay of the land of the platform we were utilizing. So the platform we used was kind of tricky to navigate. So I took the time to have a scrolling screen and show them what buttons to click on when they want to see their events, how they go into their breakout sessions. By taking the time to do that up front in the event, you set the right experience for attendees to feel confident on how to move forward. So on to you, Dana. You have some really great examples as well of the experience.
Thanks, Noelle. Yeah, we do a lot of shipping of items out to have that kind of tangible experience as well. Working with Ancient Peaks on their event with Madeline Trefon, Master Sommelier, and Master of the World to ship out blind tasting kits to kind of just give that tangible experience to the guests. And also we're doing with CSU presidents' retirements, just giving people, you know, something to look forward to, a package for them to enjoy together really has helped kind of solidify that experience for our guests and give them something to do during the event. On to the next slide. So on the next slide, there is some other visual experiences. So Noelle was talking about engaging different experiences into your Zoom sessions or whatever platform you're using. So this was with UC Davis did a seminar and utilized a company called the Sketch Effect. And so throughout the experience, the speaker content was then translated into visuals, as well as the experience and the interaction from the audience as well was kind of made its way into some of these visuals. And then we utilized this content afterwards to send out this video clip along with our survey and our thank you to all the attendees. So a nice little way to provide a visual as well to add to that attendee experience. So it's not just staring at a screen with a bunch of faces on it. So Jackie?
Thanks so much for sharing a little bit about engaging audiences. I know we're going to have some good questions about that as well. So, you know, whether it's, you know, the live Q&A, we have an event where we do it on Facebook Live, and we encourage people to show up at that time to ask questions live of the different community leaders and business leaders that we feature. You know, you can watch it after, but really the benefit is showing up then during our working lunch event and asking those questions. You know, engaging the audience is key, like the Good Morning Slow program that I talked about. You know, even just adding in the way, sharing how you can use those reactions, right? So you can, give a thumbs up if you like something, clap, and you see that popping up now on your panelist button. That just makes the audience feel like they can engage. And for the speakers as well, too, who miss, I'm sure, standing ovations and rounds of applause, it gives them a little bit of that audience feedback. So we're going to wrap it up now with event follow-up. You've planned, you've executed your event, and the follow-up, I cannot stress enough, is just as important as all of the work you put into pulling it off. You've created all of that content. You've spent so much time with your team pulling it all together. Sometimes it takes a little, even more to pull off a virtual event than an in-person. I'm sure Dana and Noelle can attest to that as well. So don't let all that hard work go to waste. You have this great content, leverage it for the weeks and months, even after your event. If someone wasn't able to attend, give them that great content, still give them access to it. That is another perk about virtual and being able to record all of this. So for instance, we will be sending this recording out to all of you. This is a free event, but if it's a paid event, you can continue to sell tickets post-event. The Chamber has an event recordings page on our site where we have all of our paid events on demand. So if there's a workshop you missed, or an inspirational event, or Good Morning Slow program that you wish you could have gone to, those are still all accessible to you after the fact. And you really can utilize all of those great resources for your organization to continue rolling that out. Another key piece in your follow-up, of course, thank your attendees and your sponsors and ask for feedback. So, you'll be getting a survey after this event. We really encourage you to do that for all of your events. Ask your audience for their, anonymous, authentic feedback. What did they like? What didn't they like? How can you continue to improve? We're all learning through this right now. Sponsors as well. It's important to make sure that your sponsors are happy and they saw their ROI from the event. And of course, as you evaluate it internally, if you should be having an event in the very beginning, and if it should be virtual or hybrid, and the who, what, when, where, why, what does it look like? Do that again after. What did we learn? What did we hear went well? What could have gone better? So we can continue to improve and grow as a team. Virtual events are here to stay, even when things do go back to normal. And so it's really important that it's an asset to understand whatever platform you choose and how you can really utilize it as an asset for your organization. And with that, we're going to open it up for questions from all of you. I know we've gotten some really good ones in the chat. And we're really excited. There's, we've set aside some time, like we said in the beginning, to make sure we hear your event specific questions. Hopefully we can all learn from each other and our experiences. So continue to please drop those in the chat. If you'd like to ask your question live, feel free to raise your virtual hand. And we're going to bring back Molly Kano, our host, to help facilitate this process, and she'll go ahead and get those questions rolling.
Awesome. Thank you, Jackie. And wow, yeah, lots of really incredible information, you guys. Thank you so much for sharing all of that today. We have had quite a few questions pop in, but just as Jackie mentioned, if you would like to ask your question live, you can use the raise hand feature, which is either in your panelist box, or if you've updated your Zoom, you can find that in the reactions button in the bottom, just like Jackie did, like that. And then I'll call on you. We'll ask you to unmute, and so you can ask your question live. But going to some of the questions in the chat that have come in, one of the questions was about surprising and delighting audiences in virtual event settings. I know Dana and Noelle, you've had great experience with this. Can you talk a little bit about some of your best practices and maybe some examples?
Absolutely. Surprise and delight, huge part of events that you always want to do, whether it's virtual or in person. So some of the ways we did it, I mean, is something as simple as what we did for Bold, which was gather quotes about our clients and their resilience ahead of time, and then they show up and see them. That's a beautiful surprise and delight that just took some thought ahead of time, but no additional money. If you do have some additional money, there's tons of really fun ways to do it with virtual events, like sending gifts ahead of time, or having activities and raffles when they arrive. So maybe it's just a quick little game that they can potentially compete and win something at. That's a fun surprise and delight. You can utilize videos. So, maybe you made a video specific for them that some random, guest person did. That's a good surprise and delight. And for us, even utilizing that software I mentioned, Emcee, as just a fun live polling, that just brings an element of seeing your own voice, displayed in data. That's this fun surprise and delight. Dana, what about you?
Absolutely. Yeah, we use a program called Cahoots to do a similar thing, to interact with guests and trivia, and to actually visualize it for attendees live on the Zoom platform. But also having like surprise entertainers. I think we've got this opportunity again to reach out to vendors or speakers that we wouldn't normally have. And if you're able to like kind of just add a fun little element that nobody expected, such as a surprise speaker or a live singer, or we had a juggler that we can just like add a little difference in your not just being talked out, let me show you something as well. And like Noelle said, adding videos and really mixing it up with your content and not just staring at a PowerPoint all day long really helps engage your clients and make them want more. And as we move into hybrid events and, the opportunity, if we've got the resources to ship items to guests, that is such a fun little addition, especially if you're like, don't open this until this component. So you can have people kind of unveiling and opening things live on screen, and having that kind of excitement versus opening it and then getting ready for the event, having it all out, it kind of adds a different element if you like open it at different parts of the experience. So. Jackie, do you have anything else on that you guys have done to surprise and delight?
We haven't dipped too much into, we definitely put a lot of focus on audience experience. But as far as the surprise and delight in the virtual space, I think what I showed is that in the Good Morning Slow, we have our live music playing in the beginning. One thing that we are focusing on that we haven't done much of is, the gift boxes, sending those out ahead of time, partnering with local vendors, restaurants to offer, meal pickup beforehand, potentially a wine tasting or a cocktail mix where you get a cocktail mixer box, and then you're watching the mixologist show you how to, step by step make that cocktail, and you can all drink it together at the same time. So we're definitely playing with it a little bit more. I think our, in the virtual space, there's definitely, like Noelle said, a lot of software that can feed into the program. And so I think that's going to be the next step in Zoom to help kind of with the Zoom fatigue, if you will.
Thank you, Jackie. I love seeing in the chat the conversation amongst our attendees as well. It's exciting to see you all sharing your own ideas, successes, and giving tips to each other on how you can support each other. So that's fantastic to see. Feel free to drop more of that in if your organization has something you can offer to the others that are participating today. But along those same lines, not all organizations have the bandwidth to be able to take on the planning and the production of these types of events within their own staff capacity. How do you recommend finding vendors or event producers that can help support some of the organizations locally to be able to bring those to life?
Yeah, I could take some of that one. It is difficult because obviously as we transition, that wasn't a line item in a lot of people's business portfolios, and you just kind of jump into it and don't necessarily market it so much because you end up getting so much business and you don't know what to do with it. So like my business transitioned to being virtual technical support for some of these smaller nonprofit events or winery events, just literally providing the back end technical support for them to accomplish whatever goal they had. But there's also a lot of organizations that we have worked with as vendors to do lighting and production for us, that I just went to and asked, hey, can you guys do you have the capacity? So for example, Bill Gaines Audio is a local company, and I asked them if they have the capacity to do some recording or production. And a lot of people are willing to shift, and they're willing to shift their business model and utilize the resources they have. Same thing with our Performing Arts Center. Like, we are utilizing the Performing Arts Center tech team to do some of our recording and video, and it wasn't in their traditional repertoire, but I think knowing what people have, those resources and skill sets, and then just talking to them.
Yeah, we utilize a lot of vendors that we work with for the hotels we host at and or the software company we use. But locally, I just want to do a little plug for the Cal Poly EIM department, Experience Industry Management. You have a ton of incredible students at Cal Poly that are learning about events daily and are always looking for internships. So I want to recommend networking with that department, and you might get some incredible local talent. So just putting that little plug in there.
Thanks, Noel. Jackie, did you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I think they really covered it all. But I think, obviously at the Chamber, we have a diverse group of members that we really have tried to help support during this time by utilizing their services and, asking them if they would like to get on board with some of the things that we've been doing. So, for instance, we feature different food and wine vendors for our monthly membership mixers. So while we can't all gather together in person and drink wine and have appetizers together, you can pick them up ahead of time and we can still gather virtually online. So I think, like Dana said, sometimes it's just asking who has the bandwidth and the availability to jump in and help with that. And we've been really excited to see a lot of our members be very innovative and creative during this time and change some of the services that they're offering to suit some of the needs in this space. I think I saw Christine Johnson drop into the chat. She's at Pacific Wildlife Care, and you can now have live ambassador animal appearances. And so that is something that is, unique and different, and definitely not something I think Pacific Wildlife Care was doing before. But, the sky's the limit with coming up with creative solutions like that. So I think it's just starting that conversation.
Thank you. So in kind of taking a look at the future, we've got some questions that have come in regards to planning for new event models as we move into the later part of this year and into next year. How would you recommend preparing for events later in this year during that unknown? And what does that model, that hybrid model of that virtual and in-person, kind of having the events run simultaneously, what does that look like for you?
I can go ahead on that one to start. So for us, I think taking advantage of that kind of passive model of the in-person really allows us to not have to just plan on if we have the capacity or if we're in the correct tier in order to safely host an event. We can do things where we are doing drive-bys and giving, having, like, for example, I was chatting with the Foundation for the Performing Arts Center on their holiday event, which unfortunately didn't happen, but talking about solutions to not having the Nutcracker. And the Nutcracker is so important to our community and such a fun event at the Performing Arts Center. So how can we continue to engage donors and provide some of that experience? And so one of the thoughts was to have out on the plaza, have a few of the performers masked and distance, providing little vignettes of that experience as people drove by, got their hot chocolate and a bag of local walnuts and a Nutcracker that was branded like save the date for our next season. So, that was all just a passive experience. You're still handing things out, but it's not going to change necessarily if we move back into, a different tier. So that's kind of how we plan for some of that. And then having future engagement, do you have somebody pick something up and then have a watch party so that you're still able to provide both of those experiences?
Yeah, what an incredible year. So last year, we all shifted to virtual. Virtual is the way to go. This year, 2021, as we hear optimism with vaccine timing, people are planning hybrid events, including our own company is planning a hybrid event. And so hybrid is new to many of us. And with this additional unique timing of guidelines shifting every month and us unable to foresee what the actual guidelines are going to be months ahead, we are planning our event essentially the beginning first week of September, which is still very early for events to reopen. So a few things to highlight about what we've been doing. We did scale back our capacity to half of what it's been. So we're not expecting, when we put on a hybrid event, for the same amount of attendees to come in person as we have in previous years. But we do have a strategy to get back up to that over the next few years. You're going to have to be flexible. So we have backup plans. What is the backup plan? If for some reason the event can't happen, that's the wonderful part about planning a hybrid event is you are planning a virtual event at the same time. So it is slightly easier to shift to full virtual if for some reason you had to. And then we are really trying, one thing I will say is it's expensive. So investing in a really good virtual event does cost money sometimes, and so does the in-person event. So this is a lot to think about on both sides to create a really good experience for your virtual attendees as well as your in-person attendees. Something simple that we're definitely planning on leveraging when we're planning a hybrid event is a dedicated Emcee that we're going to follow around live at the in-person event. We really want to make sure that our attendees that are attending on the virtual side can see that experience that happens in person and hopefully get them excited to come back the following year. But it'll be fun and just for them. So someone walking around to booths and asking them what they want this audience on the virtual side to hear. We'll definitely look at surprise and delights of what they can receive before, during, after, and make sure we're investing into that networking side for our virtual attendees. And then with our in-person attendees, because we know it's a much smaller audience, it gives us even more potential to lean into that smaller, intimate networking side of events that are so important and that people have been craving for the past year and a half. So we're really going to lean in providing all those opportunities for everyone that does come to the in-person event to leverage about the smaller, intimate size. How can we get them to meet attendees more? What is that experience in person? We luckily are hosting the conference in San Diego, which is beautiful every September. So we'll get to leverage a lot of outdoor activities as well to keep things safe. But as far as CDC guidelines go, we're following them. It's multiple things. It's the state guidelines. It's the town that you're hosting it in guidelines. It's the guidelines for the venue. They have different guidelines. Right now, the venue's guidelines are 6 feet apart from every chair. You just have to keep tabs on how those are all shifting and plan to shift for it. One last thing I want to add to hybrid event planning is we are being very flexible. If anyone for any reason cannot attend the event in person, we will make sure we can either refund or put to next year, but we want to make sure that people don't feel risky about attending the event and that if for some reason they can't, that they feel comfortable that we'll still make sure they get whatever experience they want and more from it. So yeah, it's a wild time to plan events right now.
Yeah, definitely, Noelle. And I would just echo exactly what you said. We're planning, one of our larger events, which is our annual dinner at the Slow Chamber. It is a 600-person in-person formal gala. And, a lot of the, spark and interest of that is being able to see each other in person, to recognize the hard work of our chamber and our volunteers, And so we are currently working through the process of planning that. And like you said, we're planning for virtual. That's our fallback plan. We can have it all virtual if need be. But we're hoping that by the time we plan it, which should be or have it in midsummer, we can have some kind of safe hybrid option, which might, be something as small as watch parties for it, where groups of, 10 at the most gather separately. And we really are excited to hopefully have something along the lines of our MC and host, which is our CEO, Jim D'Antona, bopping around, possibly live in person and visiting those watch parties, or, out in the community, celebrating the different businesses we've partnered with that and sponsors as well. But one great thing about virtual, again, too, is you can pre-record a lot of the content. And so, especially for award shows, galas, fundraisers, things that you want to have that segment, pre-recording is going to be your best friend. You can, show it just like, the Golden Globes, if anyone watched that this last weekend, where there are certain segments that you're filling in, as well as an in-person live piece as well too. So that's another consideration for a hybrid. It doesn't have to be in person, but it can be a mix of just live virtual and pre-recorded virtual to give it that more professional feel.
How are you all thinking about pricing with hybrid events? Are you thinking about different levels of pricing for the virtual versus the live? How are you planning to approach that?
Great question. It is the wild, wild west on virtual events, hybrid events. We definitely all want to start moving to a charge model in the future. It's really hard to compete with so much free virtual content out there right now. I can answer what we plan to do personally for our hybrid event is have multiple tiers. So we are having a charge model, but that's significantly cheaper than our live in-person model. Our live in-person model, we do a ton of surprise and delight. We do a lot of food. We do a lot of physical investment. So it does cost a lot to put that on. So we will still maintain the same price for our in-person attendees. But for virtual, we've made two different things. We have a ton of education that we feel holds its value. And we want to make sure that we don't devalue it by making all of it available for free. So we are doing a charge model at a significantly reduced price. And those are the attendee groups that are also going to get the surprise and delights, that personal MC. We're really going to try and bridge that experience so that they still feel included with the in-person event. And ideally attend the following year. But then we know not everyone's going to be open to a charge model for virtual events. So we did come up with what a light free version is. We're going to still give them access to our amazing keynotes. Can't say it yet, hasn't launched yet, but we have some great ones lined up for this year. So we're going to do one specific day of the event that they'll see that keynote live. They'll get a little taste of one of our main sessions. That's going to be really fun. And we'll provide a few digital content. So free version, charge version, virtual, plus in person. We're hoping to hit something for everyone where we can with that hybrid model.
Yeah, and I'll say on the chamber side, we're a nonprofit organization supporting the business community, don't have quite the staff size and abilities as MindBody does to pull off Bold. We don't do any event similar to something like that, but we have continued pretty much all of our events in the virtual space at the same price as we were charging for them in person. And just, want to echo what Noelle said is that we really, don't want to devalue the content. We know that it's valuable, our educational series, Insight Studio, our, inspirational and educational and networking series, Good Morning Slow. We have continued those on at the same price point, and we've seen really good response. There's a little bit of a drop off, like with anything, for people who, aren't going to, spend their time in the virtual space, or they're going to try and limit that as much as possible. They'll show back up when we move in person again, but that's to be expected with anything. We have added more free events, like the few that I mentioned earlier. So that has kind of balanced what we're doing otherwise. But I think it's really important, you got to take a look at the holistic picture and really the content, and value it for the content, not what you think you can get, but what you know it's worth.
Absolutely. And echo both of those, and also say, like, we live in an amazing community, and a lot of like the nonprofits we have here, people are continuing to give and support. And so there's not necessarily like the need to drop prices for changing your experience, because your audience will still be there and they still have the capacity to give.
Thank you for that insight. Definitely. We've got some more questions coming in. Again, remember, feel free to drop any questions into the chat, or if you'd like to ask live, don't be afraid. We'd love for this to be an open dialogue with you as well. So feel free to raise your hand and we can call on you that way as well. But we've got a question coming in from Heather. They're considering a pre-recorded video premiere on YouTube with a live Q&A during the premiere, to be followed by a Zoom chat with the directors. So they recognize the risk of losing participation by switching platforms. What are your thoughts on that?
I can add in just from personal experience. We did have to do the same thing for our virtual BOLD conference that we did, because we were having a live keynote session with Glennon Doyle that was available to everybody. But then we also had the specific group that we have this dedicated event platform for. We did have to switch platforms. We had to take them out of our event platform and take them to another one to view the Zoom live for our keynote session. So what we did was we definitely did that lay of the land ahead of time. We told them they're switching platforms. So if there's any way, if you're starting in YouTube, how can you communicate that lay of the land ahead of time? Is it via like email? Some things to consider to make your experience as easy as possible. Here are the 3 steps you're going to want to know. Or is there a way to put, before the video premiere starts in YouTube, a pre-recording of someone actually telling them how to do that? In a lot of reasons, you do have to switch softwares to give that best experience. And it sounds like you've thought about that. So truly just setting that experience ahead of time, telling them what they're doing, making it super clear, goes a really long way to not lose them along the way. Additionally, like maybe have some sort of surprise offering to make them attend the Q&A after the video, so they don't just go to the video. What can you do with the Q&A, whether it's like a raffle live or something they get live, to encourage them to switch into that platform as well? That might help go a long way.
I would also say, like, consider why you're going between those things. You can have pre-recorded content and be in a Zoom format and do Q&A in that same Zoom format and just keep people there, depending on what licensing you have. So if you're maxing out and that's the reason you're switching it over, or you want to provide, like Noelle was talking about, a separate, like a tier of opportunity, I think just understanding what the purpose is of moving, and then reiterating to people in multiple different ways about how to get to them that next step. So not just in one place, tell them in 2, 3, 4, 5, and verbalize it, and tell them again, and put it in a calendar entry, and make it really easy for them to find in a multitude of different ways.
Great, thank you. How about if you want to include music? Are there copyright considerations that you need to be considering in this?
Absolutely, I'll take that one. So yes. If you're just doing a Zoom event or another platform like a GoToMeetings or a more closed session, and you're not pushing it out to YouTube or on Vimeo, you're fine using whatever content you want. You're not going to get flagged for that. But if you're pushing it out to YouTube and you're sharing, or you're recording and then you're putting it on YouTube or putting it on the internet for others to share, you might get taken down. So some ways you can do that is using non-copyrighted music. It's pretty easy to do. You can search non-copyrighted music very easily. You also, depending on if you have any sort of paid subscription with YouTube or Vimeo, that also helps that you just get flagged on the side and they review your copyright material versus taking your content down right away. So always try to use non-copyrighted material especially if you're going to YouTube, or start your recording in your session without music at the beginning. And then the music component can be, if they're in the live Zoom component, you can edit and cut out a lot of those things. And another thing with recordings, if you're bringing your content in later, if you, in Zoom in particular, if you're doing recordings to the cloud, you've got the opportunity to record gallery view, record speaker view, record in a multitude of different ways. And then post-production, you can edit all that together. You can then add that non-copyrighted music in the beginning and end, versus if you had other music that maybe was like a cover band actually live as part of the presentation in the beginning. You can cut some of that stuff out.
Yeah, definitely. I would say, this is pretty straightforward. There are, like Dana said, some great websites where you can find free downloadable music that's not copywritten. We use Ben Sound for some of ours as well too. That was one of the songs playing on our intro slide today. But I will also say, and Dana mentioned this as well with one of the events she's worked on, utilize the great musical talent we have in this community. I think, it's been really heartwarming to see all the people connecting in the chat, like Molly mentioned earlier. So we have a really great community of great artistic talent that, and a lot of them have not been able to be working this past year. So it's another great opportunity to, ask them or pay them if they want to lend their musical talents for the beginning of your intro slides, or as a, different segment during the program to break it up. And you can give them credit and give them a little bit of a promotion as well. I know on our Good Morning Slow, we have Melody Clement open every program with about 10 to 15 minutes of music while everyone mixes and mingles. And she is a hit every single time. It's such a great way to start the morning, especially at 7:30 in the morning. And it just gets you pumped up for the day. So look within our community in ways that you can continue to partner for those musical pieces.
Absolutely. And if it makes sense for your event as well, utilize virtual tip jars. Give them opportunities and ways to make money as well. It's very easy to do. And, it promotes them and promotes you. And
I love that. And it also can serve as that surprise and delight too. I know I attended a virtual conference a couple weeks ago, and there was a pretty big performer who we weren't expecting to see that popped on for a little inspirational piece. So that's pretty, that's a good opportunity as well. I'm going to wrap this up with one final question for all of you. So, and we'll kick it off. Maybe we'll kick it off with Jackie first. What is the biggest lesson that you've learned this past year?
Yeah, definitely. We've learned a lot this past year, specifically with, planning virtual events. Like I said, we taught ourselves in the very beginning. We brought a few events online before March of last year. We knew Zoom existed, but we weren't spending any time on it really. And so it's opened up a whole new world for us. Virtual events and virtual engagement through other meetings that we have will continue on even when they don't have to be. I think the biggest thing we've learned is just trial and error, all the different pieces of, from unmuting and muting to best practices of lighting to making sure that your laptop is plugged in, because we have had a few speakers drop in some of our events whose laptop died. So all of these things that we've just really learned the hard way. We've given ourselves a lot of grace this past year, but the lesson has been just practice, forgive yourself when things go wrong. Everyone else will as well. It's technology, it's bound to. But it's been a big learned lesson. I think Molly mentioned it earlier, but we did create a guide for how to plan your virtual event with all of these lessons learned over this past year, a template for pulling something like this together and all your considerations. And so I just want to share that again in the chat for all of you. We'll send it out in our recap email as well, but it really is a start to finish for everything that you need to consider. It's the written version of the virtual event playbook. And so hopefully it can help all of you not make all the mistakes that we made.
I just want to also say that it's always changing. So we could give you a virtual event playbook today, and tomorrow Zoom made an update and none of us know how to use it. So I think it's just being, flexible and just laughing at it and knowing, just like Jackie said, having everyone else has the grace to know that technology is technology and we're all learning and we're all in this space together. So we have a lot more, forgiveness for little bumps in the road and making some humor out of those bumps. But, I have to say, looking back on this last year, what a great opportunity. A lot of us get into our modes of just having the same type of events over and over, these dinners and auctions and, same thing. And they work well, but, now we're all having to get creative and think outside of the box and just find new ways to engage. And how fun and what a cool time to be in the events world and to get the opportunity to plan and create some new things.
Absolutely. Just reiterating, the trial and error is such a huge and humble experience to go through. And as long as you take every experience and every event that you do as another learning block to create an iteration to continuing to evolve your events, you're doing the right thing. You're learning every time you do it. We learn every time we host, and we always try new things. Even if we put on an extremely successful event, how can we make it better? That, as long as you have that drive for every event you're doing, you will continue to elevate and change the experience of these virtual events all the way through your hybrid events. I've also learned it just takes a lot of people to do things. I mean, a lot of attendees don't understand how many people are involved in these virtual events. You may just see the speakers, but there are a ton of people behind the scenes that really help make these virtual events be successful. And when we did it very manually for our virtual event last year, we learned so much, especially that we just needed help. We ended up recruiting around like 20 different people throughout the whole company to really help make sure the experience was top notch. So there's so much that goes into the behind the scenes. It's incredibly hard to put these on. We know it, we feel it. But to what Jackie said, attendees feel it too, and they're thankful for it. I'm seeing all these wonderful thank yous. It's really fun to be here. We love sharing and helping everyone. We're truly in it together, and we're truly learning. And as Dana mentioned, it's always iterating, and we'll always be learning. But to me, that's the fun part. I mean, who doesn't want to continue to learn and grow their skill set? So we're all here, we're all doing it, and you're doing it great if you're doing it at all. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, gosh, thank you all so much for being here. We'll be sending a recap email with all of the recording from today's event, as well as the corresponding material that we've referenced throughout. So you can revisit this content anytime you'd like. The City of SLO's Promotional Coordinating Committee and the San Luis Obispo Chamber of Commerce are so grateful to have been able to put on this event series for you. Additionally, thank you so much to our panel for guiding us through this playbook, Noelle, Dana, Jackie, and thanks to all of you for showing up and engaging with us and with each other. We hope that you're feeling inspired. We hope that you're feeling armed with more knowledge on how to pull off a successful virtual experience. And as a reminder for all of the nonprofit participants that we have on today, there is still grant funding available from the City of SLO to help you reimagine that event. So we'll make sure that you get the link to that again as well. And we hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.